Hey guys, do you know someone considering renting their property as an Airbnb? I have worked with Rental Advisor for over a decade, and Rental Advisor provides free rental projections to prospective owners, realtors, and investors for any property in the US. So if you know someone considering getting into the vacation rental industry, have them email management@myrentaladvisor.com to get their free revenue projections. Okay. So
Yep.
now, now you do seem to be operating from a particular presupposition, and maybe I'm wrong here, but there's
Please.
a presupposition that that which is moral is that which promotes essentially the most good for the most people. Is that a fair summation of kind of the moral map?
No, because we live in a patriarchy where certain groups of people have privilege. And just because the majority of people get to distance themselves from the trauma that comes just by being a human being and going through life, just because some human beings have the ability to distance themselves from that, and because of their privilege, place that trauma on other human beings. I'm not of the mind that we make all decisions based on the collective good, because it might be necessary for 80% of the population to take a 5% hit in trauma that they should have gotten anyway, rather than being able to pass it off to the other 20% simply because of privilege. So no,
Okay.
I don't think that.
So you would say then individuals, like it doesn't matter what the collective wants, individual human beings have, like, you can do what's not in the ultimate well-being of the group in order to help particular individuals. I'm curious by what standard you say that an individual human being can't be sacrificed for the betterment of the tribe. On kind of
Yeah.
a
Just
Darwinistic on a Darwinistic perspective, no,
yeah.
you do sacrifice those who are a detriment to the tribe in order that the tribe may thrive. And people don't have rights. That's a myth. That's, as
Yeah.
Harari would say,
Yeah, it's all
that
myth.
people have rights.
Mhm.
And so it just seems strange to me that you would say that, like, I guess my question would be, like, what do you mean that human beings have rights?
Yeah. So you're putting me in a place where, and I agree with you, by the way, it would be beautiful if we lived in a world where we could, with some degree of certainty, know that there is a God, know that God is good, know which system exactly that God is advocating, and to know that the authorities in that system have the ability to pick up on God's mind and will and to deliver it to us in its pure form, so that we can know for sure that, hey, God's leading the universe, he's good, and we know for sure the rules that he's given us are good as well. And I would argue that there's a very secular explanation for how we moved from being self-centered to being world-centric, is what we're moving into right now. And there are other stages of development that have been laid out that we can move into. I don't need a religious explanation to get there.
Yeah, no. So here's my thought on that. In evolutionary terms, we are in a competition for survival in a world of limited resources. Okay. And so I don't, again, rationally speaking, it
Mhm.
would make sense for me to maximize the benefits for me and my tribe in this competition for limited resources over that of others. But the thing is you're just changing the dynamics of where we draw the boundaries of the tribe, right? You could, I don't mean, you don't have to do racial group. You could do family group. You could do all of humanity. You could do human beings as a species, right? And you then say, it's arbitrary though, right? Like, why is the morality of the Nazis, who basically said, you know, the white Aryan race are the superior tribe in the world, like that
Yeah.
group of people, and therefore we should focus on acquiring resources and privileges for us, and everyone else, like, screw them. They're not important because it's about us. Evolutionarily speaking, like, there's a reason that when you breed horses, you don't breed the crappy horses. You breed the best horses to get the best, most fit population. So I'm not understanding how biology is in any way pointing us towards this universal human not only universal human ethic, but universal, like, all life matters ethic. I guess I'm just struggling to understand where that comes from.
Just because you're breeding the more athletic or the stronger horses doesn't mean you have to take the lesser horse out to pasture and shoot him. And when you look at
you might, if there's limited resources.
Yeah, but now we're to a point where, again, we should have and we're going to get off into tangents, but maybe there's too many humans on this planet, and maybe resources isn't the problem, but maybe it's multiply and replenish the earth is the issue. Maybe every ethnocentric tribe has done its best to exponentially increase its numbers so that it could always outdo another tribe in terms of violence. And when you value your tribe producing as much offspring as possible, what you end up with is a moment in time where the number of people on the planet outweigh, especially if there's not drastic wars going on. And I think you and I both agree that war is not a great thing in terms of human healthiness and well-being. The fact that we don't have wars going on and we've come from all this ethnocentricity to this moment means now we've got, what, 7 billion, 8 billion people on the planet, and probably not enough resources for the long haul for the next 100, 200, 500 years. And so maybe we could just use less people.
So what if, so if you're in limited resources and you can only...
and I don't mean kill people, let's just stop promoting that everybody has six kids.
That was very much Margaret Sanger's thing. That was what the eugenics movement was about. People think that that's morally repugnant, but it was essentially to limit the reproduction of the least fit among us. And certainly biology teaches that there's different levels of fitnesses within a population. Do you think that there are human beings who are less fit than others?
Yeah, I don't know that I would want to say that. I think that, how do you measure the worth of a person versus another human? How do you measure the worth of a person? Only because I'm human.
Towards their ability. What if we're going to say that morality, the measure of morality is universal human thriving, or let's say the thriving of the tribe to as many as we can, then then you do have to look at the individual and say your worth is how much you contribute to the society's goal. I mean, if you have someone who's a racist, sexist, misogynist pig, is he less valuable to you than a person who is working alongside you to promote the goals of equity and justice and equality?
Yeah,
I mean, we'll kill people like that. Yeah,
there has to be repercussions in a society for any human being whose inclinations are to impose harm and trauma on others. So again, in this world, it's not a black and white world for me. In this world, we have sociopaths and narcissists and other sorts of unhealthy mental states that aren't any fault of their own. They were genetically born that way. Some people think every day about killing people, and most of us don't think at all about it. But there has to be boundaries in our society to prevent unhealthy people from hurting others. Now, but please.
Can I just ask this question about that? Because you talk about things being healthy, right? And the standard by which you're judging health, or, really what you're saying is that these people are, in a sense, immoral, because unhealthy, immoral, it's kind of the same thing. They're not contributing to this goal of universal human flourishing, right? But like you said before, how do you measure the worth of someone? Would you grant that those kind of people, that you can actually judge the worth of a person based on how much they contribute to a certain goal for humanity?
Yeah, but now you're into the space where we go. Some people have physical disabilities or mental disabilities, and they can't contribute. And I'm going to promote a society, in my mind, what I would want to promote is a society that cares after the folks who aren't as able to contribute as those who are, have an IQ of 150 and are bodybuilders.
But
Um,
isn't that similar to the, I mean, that's kind of like, and again, I'm just so everyone knows, like, I'm trying to push the
yeah,
atheist sort of logic to where I'm trying to figure out where it goes, because if you're saying that we are no different than horses and you want to breed the best horses, well, then the horses that have the disabilities and the problems and don't contribute to the betterment of the horse herd, you need to, eugenics makes sense. Eugenics is just a human form
yeah,
of biologically or controlled biological reproduction, or at least discouraging the reproduction of inferior members of a herd.
yeah. What you're trying to do is pinpoint this idea that I'm subjectively choosing what is a good morality. And that only with God are we actually able to ensure that we have a morality that we know is good. But that argument is
Well, I wouldn't,
deep.
real quick, just to, so we can steel man here, because
Please,
my argument, if I were going to make the argument, I would make this argument. I
please.
would say that, Bill, if you grew up in Rome, you'd have a totally different moral system. If you
Mhm.
grew up in ancient Aztec society, would.
Totally,
Your moral view that you have is the
totally,
product of the modern culture that you're a part of. And the
totally.
modern culture that you're a part of is the product of a Judeo-Christian ethic, which
Yeah,
transformed Western society's intellectual way that they view the world, to where now everyone in Western society believes in universal human dignity, which is
yeah,
a total anomaly in history and scientifically makes no sense, because biologically, like, inferior and superior is the name of the game in biological reproduction.
yeah. So while I agree with you that the Judeo-Christian framing deeply contributed to us moving into the modern moment where folks do feel safer, it may have been a alternative choice to what was going on throughout much of the rest of the world. You're also saying that that's how I choose all of my beliefs, and that's not true. So when I listen to, for instance, Sam Harris's TED Talk, he points to the direct idea that we can use science to dictate morality. If the
Mhm.
science shows that doing certain things or treating each other in certain ways ends up with us flourishing better as a human species, or us taking better care of the planet, or us caring for other species of life on it, then that science is a credible way at which to arrive at creating a moral code. And because closed loop systems like Mormonism are behind on social issues of how to treat other people, at least often, if not most of the time, then it is certainly reasonable for the two of us to suggest that rather than leaving it to a closed loop system where prophets tend to get really serious things wrong and tend to barely have the degree of communication that I guess the rest of us have with God, then it certainly is reasonable and rational for us to put science on a pedestal over any given religious system, and maybe even especially yours.
Well, the thing is I would say that you need to look at what science actually says. Okay? Because science says that everything is cause and effect, right? Your like, you don't believe that human beings have free will,
Free will.
correct?
No, I don't.
So we don't have agency. So we
I
don't
don't believe,
actually.
yeah. I don't, if there is free will, and science agrees, by the way, almost all the prevailing scientists agree that even if there is a degree of free will, it is extremely limited.
Okay. So real quick, would you go to slide number 9 on that slideshow? I want to get your thoughts on this, because it plays into this whole thing, right? And the first premise that I want to have here is that people are only morally responsible for the choices that they make, right? If you don't make a choice, like, you're not responsible for it because you didn't make the choice. But now let's get rid of agency altogether.
Yeah.
So we don't make choices.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't even make the choice that you like. The person who is racist didn't choose that, right?
Right.
Somebody who's
Totally.
like, if you were born in their circumstances or in their, whatever, you'd be racist, right?
Yeah, if I was born into a family where I had the predisposition to be a serial killer and my dad was absent from the home and my mom abused me, I might turn into a serial killer with no choice of my own.
So how can we have a coherent discussion about moral responsibility
Yeah.
if you're not morally responsible for any of your choices because you ultimately don't make choices?
So I had an interview with a geneticist about 5 years ago or so, and we were talking about the LGBT issue. And I got done with the interview and I said, "Hey, I'm not sure I'm going to include this in the conversation or not, but I want to talk to you about it." I said, apologists are often throwing out this slippery slope that if we allow men to marry men and have sex and women to marry women and have sex, that we're going to eventually as a society create a slippery slope where child predators get to have sex with children and people who have inclinations towards bestiality get to have sex with animals, for instance. And I said, I don't want to promote these kinds of arguments because I think it's a horrible argument in terms of rationale because consent is a big deal. And again, subjective, right? Consent's a big deal.
How can a
Hold
person
on.
consent if they don't have choice?
I know, totally. We use terms, you're right. We use terms in ways that doesn't actually reflect what's really going on, but it's the best we have in the language that we use. We all act as though we have agency, even if some of us understand that that agency is extremely limited or non-existent. So when I talked to this geneticist, I said, I want to ask you about serial killers and child predators. And she goes, Bill, you don't want to include this in the conversation because as a geneticist, it is demonstrable that it is genetic or epigenetic. Genetic meaning that it's passed from, semen and egg. Epigenetic meaning something else is going on in the womb, at least, that contributes to chemical reactions that now has that person having this predisposition. She said child predators aren't choosing to do that. They are predisposed genetically to doing such. Now we can go like, man, I wish there was a God and I wish that things were choices and I wish there was agency. But if there isn't agency, there just is an agency and we have to deal with that. And again, the science says at best, your agency is nothing like what Mormonism taught you. By the way, it also changed on that. We used to have free agency. You're old enough, I think, to have grown up in a Mormonism, because I certainly did, where we had free agency. And now we have moral agency, which is defined very different. And so I'm saying, once again, Mormonism shows that it thinks it has a right to determine what's right and wrong, but it seems unable to discern such.
See, but I'm going further and almost deconstructing all of this now. So I'm going, okay, so a person doesn't choose to be sexually attracted to children. Can they choose whether or not to actually have sex with children?
Yes and no. So pick
whatever it's not yes or no. It's either yes or no.
It is yes or no, because some people
you either can make a choice to do something or you can't, and you were determined by it.
You are determined by it.
So do you enjoy the content here on Thoughtful Faith? If so, be sure to hit the notification bell. This ensures that our new videos show up on your feed. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook group called Thoughtful Saints, where myself and others discuss the sorts of topics found on this channel. And lastly, if you think other people would benefit from this video, please be sure to share it.